After a fight, my daughter canceled my ticket and left me alone at the Honolulu airport without my phone or my wallet. A millionaire from an old money family came over and whispered, "Pretend to be my wife. My driver is coming." Then he said, "Your daughter will regret leaving you. I'm glad you're here. Follow my story to the end and comment on which city you're watching from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled. My name is Doris Miller, and I'm 64 years old. I never thought my own daughter would leave me stranded in an airport on the other side of the country, but that's exactly what happened 3 days ago in Honolulu. It all started with what I thought would be a dream family vacation. Andrea, my 8-year-old daughter, had invited me to join her on a business trip to Hawaii. "Mom, it's time you saw the world," she'd said with that smile that always melted my heart. "After everything you've done for us, you deserve this." For years, I had worked double shifts as a nurse to help her with expenses for her 2 children. When her husband left her, I was the one who moved in to help with everything. When she needed money for a down payment on her new house, I emptied my savings. When the kids needed expensive school uniforms, I paid for them. I always said yes, because that's what mothers do. The trip had been wonderful for the first 4 days. We stayed in a luxurious hotel in Waikiki, visited Pearl Harbor, and walked through the vibrant local markets. Andrea seemed relaxed, affectionate even. For the first time in years, I felt like I had my daughter back. But everything changed on the 5th morning. We were having breakfast at the hotel restaurant when Andrea got a call. Her expression hardened as she listened. When she hung up, she looked at me with a coldness I hadn't seen since her rebellious teenage years. "Mom, we need to talk," she said, her voice completely different from the previous days. "What's wrong, honey? Is everything okay?" "No, it's not okay." She leaned forward, her eyes glittering with a hardness that scared me. "I just spoke with the kids' school principal. I need the tuition for next year's private school." My heart sank. "Andrea, you know I don't have that kind of money." "What do you mean you don't have it?" "You've always had money when I needed it." "Because I've been using my retirement savings, honey. What's left is barely enough for me to live on." Her face transformed completely. The warmth she had shown during the trip vanished as if it had never existed. "Are you telling me you spent all your money on this stupid trip instead of helping your own grandchildren?" "Andrea, this trip was your idea. You paid for it. You said it was a gift. Because I thought you had money saved. I didn't know you were so selfish." The words hit me like slaps. For the next 20 minutes, Andrea yelled things at me I'll never forget. She called me a burden, a useless mother who had failed at everything. She said I'd always been too soft, too cowardly to face real life, always needing someone else to solve your problems, she spat. "You were never a real mother, just someone who gave money when it was convenient." When her tirade was over, she stood up. "Get your things, I'm taking you to the airport." "The airport? But our flight isn't until tomorrow." "Your flight is today. I already changed your ticket." The ride to the airport was silent. I was trembling, trying to process what had happened, how everything had changed so quickly. How the daughter who had hugged me last night now looked at me as if I were a stranger. At the airport, Andrea handed me my passport. "Your flight leaves in 6 hours. The gate is B23. "Andrea, please, let's talk. I don't understand what happened." "What happened is that I finally see who you really are." Her voice was ice cold. "A selfish woman who only thinks about herself." "Selfish? I've given everything for you and the kids." "Yes, and now that I really need you, you have nothing left to give." She turned to leave, then stopped. "Oh, and your phone. I need to take it. It's on my plan." "My phone? But how will I communicate?" "That's not my problem." She held out her hand. "Give it to me." With trembling hands, I gave her my phone. She also took my wallet, arguing that the credit cards were on her account too. She left me with just my passport and $100 in cash I had in my jacket pocket. "Good luck, Mom," were her last words before she disappeared into the crowd. I stood there, 64 years old, in a faraway airport, without enough money, without a phone, without any way to contact anyone. For the first time in my life, I was completely alone. The next few hours were a nightmare. When I got to gate B23, I discovered there was no flight. Andrea had lied about that too. I tried to speak with the airline employees, but they were busy, and I was too overwhelmed to explain my situation clearly. I was sitting in a chair, crying silently, when I heard hurried footsteps behind me. I turned and saw an elegant man in his 52nds, dressed in an expensive suit. He had an urgent look on his face. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said in a calm, deep voice. "Could you do me a very big favor?" I looked at him, confused, tears still streaming down my cheeks. "I need you to pretend to be my wife for a few minutes. My driver is coming, and there are some people I need to get away from. Could you help me?" I don't know why, but something in his voice made me trust him. Maybe it was desperation, or maybe I just needed someone, anyone, to treat me like I mattered. "Okay," I whispered. He helped me to my feet, and we walked together toward the exit. While we waited, he looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen in a long time. Respect. "Your daughter is going to regret leaving you here," he said softly. I didn't know what he meant, but his words stayed with me. For the first time in hours, I felt a spark of something I didn't know I had lost. My own dignity. The car that picked us up was more luxurious than anything I had ever been in. The driver, an older man with a kind smile, greeted us politely. "My name is Arthur Sterling," my companion said as the car pulled away from the airport, "and you must be wondering what you've gotten yourself into." I nodded, still feeling like I was in a strange dream. "I'm Doris Miller. And yes, I'm very confused." Arthur smiled sadly. "I saw what happened at the airport. Your daughter left you there." "How do you know she was my daughter?" "Because I recognize that look. It's the same one my son gave me the last time I saw him, 5 years ago." His voice broke slightly. "There's a particular kind of cruelty that only children can show their parents." During the drive to his home, Arthur told me his story. He was a widower with 3 adult children who had cut off all contact with him after a dispute over their mother's will. They wanted him to sell everything and divide the money immediately. He wanted to keep the family businesses intact. "They accused me of being greedy, of putting money before family," he explained. "They didn't understand that everything I built was for them, for their children. Now, I don't even know my own grandchildren." When we arrived at his property, I couldn't hide my astonishment. It was a modern but elegant mansion with perfectly manicured gardens and a breathtaking view of the ocean. Because I recognized that look. It's the same one my son gave me the last time I saw him, 5 years ago. His voice broke slightly. "There's a particular kind of cruelty that only children can show their parents." His housekeeper, an older woman named Mrs. Gable, greeted us with iced tea and freshly baked cookies. Arthur explained the situation, and she looked at me with maternal understanding before showing me to a beautiful room on the 2nd floor. "Stay as long as you need," Arthur told me that first night at dinner. "I have no ulterior motives. I just understand what it's like to be abandoned by those we love most." The following days were surreal. Arthur was a perfect host, respectful, attentive, but not intrusive. He lent me a phone so I could try to contact Andrea, but she had blocked my number. When I called the house using Arthur's phone, my oldest grandson, Dylan, who was 16, answered. "Grandma, where are you? Mom said you went off on your own trip." "Dylan, honey, I'm in Hawaii. Your mom left me here." There was a silence. "That can't be true, Grandma. Mom wouldn't do that. Ask her, Dylan. Ask her why I can't come home." That night, Dylan called me back, crying, "Grandma, Mom says you're a dramatic liar. She says you left because you wanted an adventure, and now you're making up stories to make her look bad." My heart broke. Andrea hadn't just abandoned me. She was poisoning my grandchildren against me. Arthur found me that night sitting in the garden crying. He sat beside me without saying anything for a long time. "Do you know what the most painful part is?" I finally asked him. "It's not just that she left me. It's that she's turning my grandchildren against me. She's making them believe I'm the bad guy." That night, Dylan called me back, crying, "Grandma, Mom says you're a dramatic liar. She says you left because you wanted an adventure, and now you're making up stories to make her look bad." "Manipulators always rewrite history," Arthur said softly. "My former daughter-in-law tells my grandchildren I'm a bad grandfather who doesn't love them. Now they don't even answer my letters." Arthur looked at me with wise eyes. I decided that if I was going to be alone, I would at least be surrounded by people who value me for who I am, not for what I can give them. Over the next week, Arthur introduced me to his social circle. Other business leaders, artists, professionals, many of whom had also faced family betrayals. For the first time in years, I found myself in conversations where my opinion mattered, where people listened to my stories of working as a nurse with genuine respect. "You have a very valuable perspective on patient care," a doctor told me during a dinner party. "At my hospital, we need consultants with your experience." "Consultants?" I asked, confused. Arthur smiled. "Doris, you have 40 years of experience in healthcare. That's worth gold here, where they are expanding their health services." But while I was starting to feel valued for the first time in decades, a part of me was still waiting for Andrea to call, to apologize, to admit her mistake. I kept checking the phone Arthur had lent me, hoping for a message that never came. One afternoon, while Arthur was in a business meeting, I received a call from an unknown number. It was Andrea. "Mom, where on earth are you? The neighbors are asking about you." "I'm in Hawaii, Andrea, where you left me." "Don't be dramatic. I just needed some time to think. Now, come back. The kids need you." "The kids need me? Or do you need me to come back to watch them while you go out?" "How dare you? I'm a single mother working hard. And I'm a 64-year-old woman who spent her entire life in savings helping you, only to be abandoned in a foreign airport. You seem to have money to stay in luxury hotels." "I'm not in a hotel, Andrea." "Where are you then?" For the first time in my life, I decided not to explain everything to my daughter. "I'm where someone values me." "What is that supposed to mean?" "Where are you then?" For the first time in my life, I decided not to explain everything to my daughter. "I'm where someone values me." I stood there trembling, holding the phone, when Arthur returned from his meeting. "Doris, what happened?" "My daughter called," I whispered, "and I think I just lost my family forever." Arthur sat next to me, his presence calming. Sometimes, losing toxic people is the only way to find ourselves. His words resonated in my mind that night. For the first time, I began to wonder if Andrea had always been this way, or if I was only now seeing the truth I had been denying for years. I had been living at Arthur's house for 2 weeks when everything changed. I had started to feel comfortable, even useful. I helped Mrs. Gable with meals, organized Arthur's library, and had started teaching English to some of his staff. For the first time in years, I felt valued for something other than my ability to give money. That morning, Arthur seemed nervous at breakfast. He kept looking at me as if he wanted to say something but was holding back. Finally, after Mrs. Gable cleared the plates, he cleared his throat. "Doris, I need to tell you something, but I don't know how you're going to react." My stomach tensed. "What is it, Arthur?" "It's about your daughter, Andrea." My heart leaped. "What about Andrea? Did something happen to her?" "No, it's not that." Arthur stood up and walked to the window, avoiding my gaze. "Doris, your daughter works for a company called Global Tech Solutions." "Yes. She's an HR manager there." "How do you know?" Arthur turned to me, his expression grave. "Because one of my companies has a consulting contract with them. I've been in several meetings there over the past 6 months. Have you seen her? Have you talked to her?" "Yes, Doris. And what I've seen." He stopped, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know how to tell you this." "Just tell me, Arthur. Please." He sat across from me and took my hands in his. "Your daughter has a terrible reputation in that office. The older employees are afraid of her." "Afraid? Why?" "Because she treats them like garbage. I've witnessed her yelling at them, humiliating them in public meetings, threatening them with termination if they don't do exactly what she wants." Arthur paused, seeing my shocked expression. "But the worst part is what she says about older people in general." "What does she say?" "That they're a burden to companies, that they're just kept around out of pity, that they should retire and make way for younger, more capable people." I felt as if I had been punched in the stomach. That can't be Andrea. She's not like that. "Doris, last week I witnessed her make a 60-year-old secretary cry in front of the entire office. She told her she was too old and slow for the modern workplace. Tears began to fall down my cheeks. But with me, she was never. With you, it was different because she needed you. She needed your money, your free childcare, your unconditional support." Arthur squeezed my hands gently. "But now that you can't give her what she wants, she's showing her true face." "How can you be so sure it's the same person?" Arthur took out his phone and showed me a picture. It was Andrea in an office meeting, but her expression was different from anything I had ever seen. She had a cruel, dismissive smirk as she spoke to someone out of frame. I took this picture last week when she was yelling at an older employee for a minor mistake. My world tilted. The woman in that photo was my daughter, but she was also a stranger. How had I been so blind? There's more, Arthur continued gently. Yesterday, after your phone call, I did some discreet research. I spoke with some colleagues who know her family situation. What did you find out? Arthur took out his phone and showed me a picture. It was Andrea in an office meeting, but her expression was different from anything I had ever seen. She had a cruel, dismissive smirk as she spoke to someone out of frame. I took this picture last week when she was yelling at an older employee for a minor mistake. Every word was like a stab wound, but I helped her for years. I paid her bills, watched her kids, emptied my savings for her. I know, but she rewrote everything in her version of the story. You are the parasite. I stood up abruptly, feeling nauseous. I need some air. I went out to the garden, Arthur following at a respectful distance. I sat on the bench under the banyan tree where we had spent so many afternoons talking, but now everything felt different. Everything I believed about my relationship with Andrea was a lie. How long have you known? I asked when Arthur sat beside me. Since the second week you were here. When you told me her last name and where she worked, the connection was immediate. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I wanted to be sure, and because I saw how much you love her, despite everything. Arthur sighed. Also, because I wanted you to feel strong before you knew the truth. Strong? I laughed bitterly. I feel destroyed. No, Doris. Look at you. 3 weeks ago, you were abandoned in an airport, feeling useless and rejected. Now, you are surrounded by people who value you, contributing your knowledge, finding your own voice. That is not weakness. He was right, but it hurt too much to admit it at that moment. There's something else you need to know, Arthur continued softly. Yesterday, I called Global Tech to confirm some meeting dates. The secretary casually mentioned that Andrea had been bragging about her free vacation in Hawaii. Free vacation? She told everyone that she had sent you on an all-expenses-paid trip to get you out of her hair for a few weeks. That she had finally found a way to get rid of her mom problem temporarily. Those words shattered my heart completely. It hadn't been a gesture of love. It had been a strategy to get me out of the way. I also found out that she's already looking into nursing homes in your area. She's called 3 different places in the past 2 weeks. Nursing homes? I whispered, horrified. Her plan, apparently, is to declare you mentally incompetent when you return, so she can take control of whatever money you have left. The world collapsed around me. My own daughter hadn't just abandoned me. She had been planning to lock me away to steal what little I had left. How can she be so cruel? I cried. I gave her everything, and she took advantage of that, Arthur said firmly. But Doris, listen to me carefully. You are not responsible for someone else's cruelty, not even if that person is your daughter. That night I couldn't sleep. I walked through the house processing everything Arthur had revealed. Every memory from the last few years was reinterpreted in this new light. The time Andrea had yelled at me in front of her friends, the time she had made me feel guilty for needing a break after watching the kids all day, her constant impatience with me, as if my presence were an annoyance. It all made sense now. I hadn't been a deficient mother. I had been a victim. The next morning, Arthur found me in the kitchen making coffee before sunrise. You didn't sleep? I couldn't. I turned to him. Arthur, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Of course. Did you invite me to stay here because you feel sorry for me? Arthur looked me directly in the eyes. I'm going to tell you the complete truth. At first, yes, it was compassion. I recognize the pain of family abandonment because I've lived it. My heart sank, but he continued. But in these 3 weeks, Doris, I've discovered that you are one of the most valuable people I've ever met. Your wisdom, your genuine compassion, your ability to find beauty even in pain. Don't stay here out of pity. Stay because you have so much to offer the world. For the first time since Arthur had told me the truth about Andrea, I felt a spark of hope. Do you really think I can build a life here? A real life? I don't just think it, Doris. I know it, and I'm going to help you prove it to yourself. In that moment, something shifted inside me. The woman who had been waiting for her daughter to value her died. In her place, A woman who was finally going to value herself began to be born. 2 days after the revelation about Andrea, Arthur came home with a proposal that would change everything. "Doris, do you remember I mentioned we need health consultants at one of my companies? I was helping Mrs. Gable fold clean laundry, an activity I had started to find therapeutic." "Yes, I remember." "Well, I was serious. I have a meeting tomorrow with the medical director of the new geriatric care center we're opening. They need someone with real-world experience in caring for older adults to establish the care protocols." "Yes, I remember. I'm not inventing anything." He pulled a folder from his briefcase. "Look at these documents. The project is real, the position is real. And frankly, after reviewing your experience, I think you would be perfect." I looked through the papers. It was a luxury care facility designed specifically to provide high-quality care to seniors. The blueprints showed impressive facilities, but what caught my attention most were the care protocols they had outlined. They were technically correct, but they lacked the human touch that 40 years of experience had taught me. "These protocols are fine," I commented, "but there are some things that could be improved." "Like what?" For the next hour, I explained to Arthur the subtleties of geriatric care that aren't taught in books. The importance of maintaining familiar routines, the right way to communicate with patients with dementia, the small details that make the difference between clinical care and human care. Arthur listened intently, taking notes. "Doris, this is exactly what we need. Would you come with me to the meeting tomorrow?" "As what?" For the next hour, I explained to Arthur the subtleties of geriatric care that aren't taught in books. The importance of maintaining familiar routines, the right way to communicate with patients with dementia, the small details that make the difference between clinical care and human care. Arthur listened intently, taking notes. "Doris, this is exactly what we need. Would you come with me to the meeting tomorrow?" The meeting the next day was a revelation. The medical director, Dr. Evans, was a brilliant young man but clearly overwhelmed by the complexity of establishing humanized care protocols. "We've studied the best centers in Europe and the US," he explained, "but something is missing. The patients are technically well cared for, but families complain that there's a lack of warmth." "Because you're treating people like medical cases instead of human beings with stories," I said. "An 80-year-old patient isn't just someone who needs medication on time. They're someone who was perhaps a teacher, a father, an artist. That history matters to their care." Over the next 2 hours, I showed them how small changes in the protocols could completely transform the patient experience, how to personalize rooms with familiar objects, how to train staff to listen to stories, not just symptoms, how to create spaces where families felt welcomed instead of tolerated. At the end of the meeting, Dr. Evans officially offered me the position. The salary was more than I had ever earned as a nurse, $120,000 a year, plus health benefits and housing. "Housing?" I asked, confused. "We have apartments for senior staff in the same complex as the center," Arthur explained. "Doris, this would give you complete independence." For the first time in weeks, I thought of Andrea without pain. I thought of how she had seen me as a burden, as someone who couldn't support herself. Now I had the chance to prove the opposite, not to her, but to myself. "I accept," I said, and it felt like waking up from a decades-long dream. The next few days were a whirlwind of preparations. Arthur helped me get all the necessary documents to work legally. He introduced me to an immigration lawyer who explained the process for obtaining a work visa. "With your experience in this position, you qualify for a specialty occupation visa that can be renewed indefinitely," the lawyer explained. "After a few years, you can apply for permanent residency." Meanwhile, I started working with the center's design team, helping them create spaces that truly served elderly patients. It was work I loved, using knowledge I had accumulated over decades but had never fully valued. "Doris, do you realize how revolutionary these protocols are?" Dr. Evans told me one afternoon, "We're creating a model that other centers will want to copy." A week after accepting the position, I received a call I had been expecting. It was Andrea. "Mom, when are you going to stop this ridiculousness and come home? The kids need you." "Hello, Andrea," I said calmly. "How are Dylan and Sophie?" "They're fine, but they miss their grandma, especially Dylan. He's been asking about you." My heart ached. I missed my grandchildren terribly. "Can I speak with him?" He's at school. Mom, let's be serious. This independence phase has gone on long enough. It's time for you to come back to your real life. This is my real life, Andrea. What is that supposed to mean? It means I have a job here. A real job with a real salary where my experience is valued. There was a long silence. A job? Mom, you're 64. What kind of job could you have there? I'm a senior consultant at a medical center. I'm helping establish geriatric care protocols. That's ridiculous. Who would give you a job at your age? They're probably scamming you. My boss is Arthur Sterling. You can look him up if you want. Another silence. Then I heard typing on a computer. I knew Andrea was looking up information about Arthur online. Mom. Her voice had changed completely. Are you living with a billionaire? I'm living in the home of a friend who helped me when you abandoned me. I didn't abandon you. I just needed space to think. Andrea, you left me in a distant airport without money or a phone. That's called abandonment. Okay, maybe I overreacted. But now you can come back. All is forgiven. Forgiven? I laughed without humor. You forgive me? Mom, don't make this harder than it has to be. I know you're upset, but you've made your point. Now come home. My home is here now, Andrea. Your home? Mom, what's going to happen when that man gets tired of you? When he realizes you're just an old woman with no money? Her words hurt, but this time in a different way. They didn't hurt because they were true, but because they revealed exactly what Andrea thought of me. Andrea, I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to be honest. Have you ever seen me as anything more than a free babysitter and a source of money? How can you ask me that? You're my mother. That doesn't answer my question. A long silence. When Andrea spoke again, her voice had that familiar coldness. You know what, Mom? If you want to play at being independent with your new rich boyfriend, go ahead. But when it all falls apart, don't come asking for help. I won't need help, Andrea. For the first time in my life, I'm building something for myself. I hung up the phone, feeling a strange mix of sadness and liberation. Arthur, who had been reading in the living room but clearly listening to the conversation, came over. How do you feel? Like I just cut the last chain that tied me to a life that was never really mine. And is that a good or bad thing? I thought for a moment. It's terrifying, but it's also liberating. Arthur smiled. Welcome to your new life, Doris. That night, as I packed my few belongings to move into my new apartment near the medical center, I found the phone Arthur had lent me. It had several messages from numbers I didn't recognize from back home. I checked them and found they were from neighbors and acquaintances from my old life. Doris, Andrea says you ran off with a rich man and abandoned her. Is it true? Is it true you left your grandchildren for money? Your daughter is very worried about you. She says that man is manipulating you. Each message showed me how Andrea was rewriting the story once again, but this time I didn't care. The opinions of people who didn't know the whole truth no longer had power over me. I deleted all the messages and turned off the phone. Tomorrow my new life would begin, and for the first time in decades, that life would be completely mine. 3 months had passed since I started my new life in Hawaii. The geriatric center had opened its doors 6 weeks ago, and we already had a waiting list. The protocols we had developed were working better than anyone had expected. Families talked about the warmth of the place, how their loved ones were not only well cared for, but genuinely happy. Dr. Brositz. Evans had promoted me to Director of Patient Wellness, with a salary increase to $150,000 a year. For the first time in my life, I had more money than I needed to live. My apartment was beautiful, I had genuine friends, and I woke up every morning with a purpose. That Thursday morning, Mrs. Gable called me early. Doris, honey, you need to come to Arthur's house right now. What's wrong? Is Arthur okay? He's fine, but there's someone here who insists on seeing you. A young woman with 2 children. She says she's your daughter. My blood ran cold. Andrea is there. Yes. And she's very upset. She's been yelling for an hour. I'm on my way. The drive from my apartment to Arthur's house had never seemed so long. My hands trembled as the driver Arthur had assigned to me navigated the morning traffic. What was Andrea doing in Hawaii? And why had she brought the children? When I arrived, I could hear the shouting from the garden. Andrea's sharp, furious voice cut through the closed windows. This is ridiculous. I demand to see my mother right now. I walked through the front door and found her pacing in the living room like a caged animal, while Arthur sat calmly in his chair, clearly tense. Dylan and Sophie were on the sofa, looking uncomfortable and scared. "Grandma!" Sophie ran to me and hugged me tightly. She was 10 now and had grown so much in these 3 months. "My love," I whispered, hugging her back. Dylan, now almost 17, approached more slowly, but I could see the relief in his eyes. "Grandma, Mom said you were in trouble," Dylan muttered. "She said a bad man had kidnapped you." "I didn't disappear, Andrea. You know exactly where I've been because we've spoken several times." "I won't need help, Andrea. For the first time in my life, I'm building something for myself." I walked through the front door and found her pacing in the living room like a caged animal, while Arthur sat calmly in his chair, clearly tense. Dylan and Sophie were on the sofa, looking uncomfortable and scared. "Good morning, Andrea," I said calmly. "How have you been?" "Spoken? 5-minute conversations where you act like you're too important for your own family." Andrea whirled around, her eyes blazing with a fury I had never seen before. "Finally, Mom. Get your things. We're leaving right now." "Don't tell me what's better for my children." Andrea turned on him like a striking snake. "And don't call me ma'am. You're the one who's manipulating a vulnerable old woman." "Andrea." My voice came out stronger than I expected. "Do not speak to Arthur that way. He helped me when you abandoned me." "I didn't abandon you. I gave you space to reflect." "You left me in an airport far from home without money or a phone. Because you were being impossible. You're always so dramatic." Dylan came closer to me. "Grandma, is it true that Mom left you here?" I looked at my grandson, seeing the confusion in his young eyes. "Yes, Dylan, it's true." "That's a lie," Andrea shouted. "I bought her a return ticket. She chose to stay." "Andrea, the ticket you gave me was fake. There was no flight." For the first time, Andrea fell silent. I could see in her face that she hadn't expected me to know that. That was a system error," she stammered. "No, Andrea, it was a plan. You wanted to get rid of me temporarily, but you didn't expect me to find a way to stay." Sophie tugged on my sleeve. "Grandma, why would Mommy do that?" I looked at my granddaughter, struggling with how much of the truth a 10-year-old could handle. "Sometimes adults make mistakes, my love. Very big mistakes." "They weren't mistakes!" Andrea exploded again. "Everything I've done has been for this family. I worked like a slave to support these children after their father left us, and the only help I had was you. And now you abandon me for the first rich man who pays attention to you." "Andrea, I helped you for years. I emptied my savings. I worked extra shifts. I cared for your children as if they were my own. Because that's your obligation as a grandmother." "My obligation?" The word came out like a whip. "And what is your obligation as a daughter?" "I didn't ask to be born." The silence that followed was deafening. Sophie began to cry softly. Dylan turned pale. Even Arthur, who had witnessed many family fights, looked shocked. "You just said you didn't ask me to be born," I asked slowly. Andrea realized what she had said, but her pride prevented her from retracting it. "You know what I meant." "I know exactly what you meant, and I finally understand who you really are." I turned to Dylan and Sophie. "Kids, can you go with Mrs. Gable to the kitchen? I think she has fresh cookies." After the children left, I looked Andrea directly in the eyes. "Now we're going to talk like adults." "You just said you didn't ask me to be born," I asked slowly. "Yes, let's talk. This farce has gone on long enough." "You're right, it has." I took a deep breath. "Andrea, for years I convinced myself that your behavior towards me was because you were stressed, because you were a single mother, because you had a lot of pressure. But now I understand the truth." "What truth?" "That you've never seen me as your mother. You've seen me as your personal employee, someone who exists to make your life easier." "That's ridiculous." "Is it ridiculous?" "Tell me, Andrea, when was the last time you asked me how I was doing? Not my health, not if I needed anything. When was the last time you cared if I was happy?" Andrea opened her mouth, then closed it. She had no answer. "You're right, it has." I took a deep breath. "Andrea, for years I convinced myself that your behavior towards me was because you were stressed, because you were a single mother, because you had a lot of pressure. But now I understand the truth. I respect you. No, Andrea, you have never respected me. You have tolerated me as long as I was useful. Arthur cleared his throat gently. Doris, perhaps you should tell your daughter about your job. Job? Andrea laughed dismissively. Please, what kind of real job could a 6'4" woman have in a foreign country? I'm the director of patient wellness at the Sterling Meadows Medical Center, I said calmly. I earn $150,000 a year developing geriatric care protocols. Andrea's expression changed completely. That's impossible. You can verify it if you want. I also have a legal work visa and am in the process of obtaining permanent residency. But you're just a nurse. I'm a nurse with 40 years of experience who is finally working with people who value that experience. Andrea sank into a chair, processing this information. $150,000, she muttered. That's more than I make. Yes, Andrea, it's more than you make. The woman you called useless and too old is earning more money than you. This can't be happening, she whispered. You're supposed to need me, not the other way around. And there it was. The raw, naked truth. Andrea wasn't upset because she missed me. She was upset because she had lost control over me. I want you to know something, Andrea, I said softly. Despite everything you've done, I still love you. You are my daughter, but I will no longer allow you to treat me as if I have no value. What is that supposed to mean? It means that if you want to have a relationship with me, it will be on my terms, with mutual respect, or it won't be at all. Andrea stood up abruptly. Are you threatening me? No, Andrea. I'm giving you a choice. Her eyes filled with tears, but they were tears of rage, not regret. You can't do this to me. I'm your daughter. The kids are your grandchildren. And you will always be welcome in my life if you learn to treat me with dignity. This is his fault, Andrea pointed accusingly at Arthur. He's brainwashed you. No, Andrea. He helped me remember who I am. Andrea looked between Arthur and me, her breath ragged. Fine. If this is what you want, if you want to choose a stranger over your own family, then so be it. But don't expect to see your grandchildren again. Those words hurt more than anything else she had said, but I didn't break. Andrea, if you use my grandchildren as weapons against me, the only ones you'll harm are them. They're better off without a grandmother who abandons them. I didn't abandon them. I found my way back to myself. Andrea headed for the door but stopped. When this all falls apart, when you realize you're just a foolish old woman who was tricked by a rich man, don't come begging us to forgive you. They're better off without a grandmother who abandons them. Andrea looked between Arthur and me, her breath ragged. Fine. If this is what you want, if you want to choose a stranger over your own family, then so be it. But don't expect to see your grandchildren again. I stood there, trembling, not from fear, but from a strange mix of pain and liberation. Arthur came over and placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. How do you feel? Like I just walked out of a prison I didn't know I was in. A year after that confrontation with Andrea, I found myself sitting in my office at the Sterling Meadows Medical Center, reviewing monthly reports. Our center had become the model for geriatric care throughout the region. Delegations from other states came regularly to study our protocols. I, the woman whose own daughter had called her useless, was now considered a national expert. My desk phone rang. It was Mrs. Gable. Doris, honey, you have a call. It's your grandson, Dylan. My heart sped up. I hadn't heard from my grandchildren since that terrible visit 12 months ago. Put him through, please. Grandma? Dylan's voice sounded different, deeper. He was 18 now. Dylan, my love, how are you? I'm okay, Grandma. I just graduated from high school. Congratulations, honey. And Sophie? She's good too, Grandma. I wanted to call you because, his voice broke slightly, because I just turned 18 and Mom can't stop me from talking to you anymore. Tears began to roll down my cheeks. Oh, Dylan. Grandma, I need you to know something. Sophie and I never believed the things Mom said about you. We knew you hadn't abandoned us. What did she tell you? That you had gone crazy. That rich man had brainwashed you. That you didn't love us anymore. Dylan paused. But we remembered. We remembered how you were before, how you were always there for us. I have always loved you, Dylan. Every single day of this past year, I have carried you in my heart. We know, Grandma. And there's something else you need to know. What is it, honey? Mom lost her job 6 months ago. My stomach tensed. What happened? She was fired for mistreating older employees. Apparently there had been a lot of complaints about her behavior. Dylan sighed. She's been working temp jobs since then. She doesn't make half of what she used to. Despite everything Andrea had done to me, I felt a pang of concern. Are you guys okay financially? Do you have what you need? We're okay, Grandma. The truth is, things at home are calmer now that Mom doesn't have so much power over other people. I think losing that job forced her to do some thinking. Has she mentioned anything about what happened between us? Sometimes. When she's really stressed, she says everything would be different if you were here to help. But then she gets mad at herself for saying it. I closed my eyes, processing this information. Dylan, can I ask you something? Do you want me to come back? A long silence. Grandma, I want you to be happy. And from what I've researched about your life there, you seem really happy. Sometimes. When she's really stressed, she says everything would be different if you were here to help. But then she gets mad at herself for saying it. Yeah, Grandma. I found articles about the medical center where you work. I saw pictures of you at conferences. You look radiant. You look like we haven't seen you look in years. The tears were flowing freely now. It's because for the first time in my life I feel valued for who I am. Then we don't want you to come back, if it means going back to being unhappy. But we do want to be in your life. Oh, Dylan, of course you can be in my life. What do you think about coming to visit me during the summer break? I can send you the tickets. Seriously, we can do that? Of course, my love. Arthur has a huge house, there's plenty of room, and I would love for you to get to know Hawaii. And Mom? That was the question I had been avoiding. If Andrea wants to come, she can too. But it would have to be with respect, Dylan. I can't tolerate her treating me the way she did before. I understand, Grandma. And I think she's starting to understand too. After the call, I sat in my office for an hour, processing everything Dylan had told me. Arthur knocked on the door and came in. Everything all right? Mrs. Gable said you'd had an important call. I told him about the conversation with Dylan. Arthur listened in silence, nodding occasionally. How do you feel about them visiting? He asked when I finished. Excited, nervous, worried too. Worried about what? About Andrea coming and trying to, I don't know, convince me to go back with them. Arthur smiled gently. Doris, would you want to go back? I thought about the question seriously. I imagined going back to my old life, taking care of the kids after school, cooking for Andrea, cleaning the house, being taken for granted again. No, I said firmly. I would not want to go back to that life. Then there's nothing to worry about. You are not the same woman you were a year ago. He was right. The Doris who had been abandoned at that airport was a woman defined by her utility to others. The Doris who existed now was defined by her own worth. 2 months later, Dylan and Sophie arrived in Hawaii. Seeing my grandchildren again was one of the happiest moments of my life. Sophie, now 11, ran to me at the airport and hugged me as if not a day had passed. Dylan, tall and handsome, hugged me with more reserve, but with equal affection. Grandma, this place is incredible, Sophie exclaimed as we drove to Arthur's house. For the next 2 weeks, I showed them my new life. I took them to the medical center, where they met my colleagues and saw the work I was doing. I introduced them to my friends, who welcomed them with genuine warmth. I showed them my apartment, decorated with photos of them and memories of our family, but also with new memories from my life in Hawaii. Grandma, Dylan said to me one night as we had dinner in Arthur's garden, I've never seen you so peaceful. What do you mean? Before, you always seemed stressed, like you were waiting for something bad to happen. Here, you're different. You're yourself. Sophie nodded vigorously. Yeah, and everyone here respects you so much. At the clinic, that doctor said you were the wisest person she knew. Because here, they see me for my experience and knowledge, not just as the grandma who runs errands. On the last day of their visit, Sophie asked me a question that both broke and healed my heart at the same time. Grandma, can I come live with you when I finish school? My love, why would you want to do that? Because you're happy here. And when you're happy, I'm happy too. That night, after the kids were asleep, Arthur and I sat in the garden as we had so many times over the past year. Are you thinking about what Sophie said? He asked. Yes. It's tempting, isn't it? To have my grandchildren here with me. But But I don't want them to come for the wrong reasons. I want them to come because they are building their own lives, not because they are escaping from Andrea. You are very wise. Arthur, there's something I've wanted to ask you for months. What is it? Do you ever regret helping me that day at the airport? Arthur looked at me with genuine surprise. Doris, helping you was the best thing I've done in years. You didn't just rebuild your own life, you helped me rebuild mine. What do you mean? Seeing your strength, your ability to start over at 64, inspired me to try to reconcile with my own children. And how did that turn out? Well, my youngest son finally answered my letters last month. It's a start. The next day, I took Dylan and Sophie to the airport. I didn't know if Andrea would be there to pick them up, but I saw her waiting in the arrivals hall, looking thinner, more tired than before. As we approached, she stood up. For a moment, I thought she was going to yell at me or make a scene, but instead she simply said, "Hello, Mom." "Hello, Andrea." An awkward silence stretched between us as Dylan and Sophie gathered their luggage. "They look happy," Andrea said finally. "They had a wonderful vacation." "Mom, she started, then stopped. "What is it, honey?" "Nothing. Just take care of yourself." It wasn't an apology, but it was more than I had expected. As I watched my grandchildren walk away with their mother, I didn't feel the despair I had felt before. I felt hope. 6 months later, I received a letter from Andrea. A real, handwritten letter. "Mom," it began, "I've been thinking a lot about what happened between us. I lost my job because I treated older people exactly the way I treated you. Seeing that made me realize some things about myself that I don't like. I'm not ready to apologize completely yet, because I'm still angry at you for leaving. But I'm starting to understand why you did it. The kids talk about you all the time, about how happy you look, how important your work is, how respected you are. I never saw you like that when you lived here, and that's my fault. I don't know if we can ever fix this between us, but I want you to know that I'm trying to be a better person, a better mother. Maybe someday I can be a better daughter too. The kids want to visit you again in the summer. If it's okay with you, I'd like to send them. Andrea." That night, sitting on my lanai overlooking the city that had become my home, I wrote my reply. "Andrea, of course, the children can come next summer. And if you ever want to visit too, you are welcome. But only if you can come as a daughter who respects her mother, not as someone who wants to convince me to go back to being who I was before. I am proud of the woman I have become, and I will never apologize for that again. With love, Mom." As I sealed the letter, I thought about the journey I had traveled. From a woman abandoned in an airport to a respected national expert. From being seen as a burden to being valued for my wisdom. From living for others to living for myself. I didn't know if Andrea and I would ever have the mother-daughter relationship I had always wanted, but for the first time, that was okay. I had a full and satisfying life, with or without her approval. The next day, as I walked through the halls of the medical center, greeting patients who welcomed me with genuine smiles, I realized something. I had found my place in the world, and no one could ever take that away from me again. That afternoon, Arthur found me in my office, smiling as I read progress reports from our patients. "Do you know what the most beautiful thing about your story is, Doris?" he said. "What?" "That you didn't need to get revenge on anyone to find your happiness. You simply chose to value yourself." He was right. The best revenge hadn't been hurting Andrea or proving her wrong. The best revenge had been building a life so full and satisfying that her opinion of me no longer mattered. That night, as I prepared dinner in my beautiful apartment, my phone rang. It was Sophie. "Grandma, guess what?" "What is it, my love?" "Mom told me I can study business administration when I go to college. She says maybe I can work in hospitals like you." I smiled, feeling a familiar warmth in my chest. "That sounds wonderful, Sophie. Grandma, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Are you ever scared, being so far away from us?" I thought about the question seriously. Sometimes I miss not being able to hug you whenever I want. But I'm not scared, my love, because I know that no matter where I am, you are in my heart. And I know that no matter what happens, I will never lose myself again. After I hung up, I sat on my lanai once more, watching the lights of Honolulu stretch to the horizon. At 65, I had learned the most important lesson of my life, that I deserved love, respect, and happiness, and that the only person responsible for ensuring I had them was myself. The woman who had been abandoned at an airport had died. In her place, a woman who knew her worth had been born, and that woman would never again let anyone make her feel less than she was. I was free. I was happy. I was enough.